Hey guys, it's Villain Theory, and I'm here to talk today all about Plan B in part of my new series all about underrated cards. What is an underrated card? Well, it's a card I think is pretty good that I don't think most people do. And that can vary. Maybe it's a card that most people think is good that I think is really good. Maybe it's just a good card that I think people have generally forgotten about, that isn't talked about much anymore, but deserves some spotlight. And today we're talking all about Plan B, the card with the art where Spider-Ham is taking a nice big bite out of someone. Biting someone isn't normally my plan B, maybe plan C or D in some situations, I don't know, but it is a one cost upgrade, tactic traded, play under any player's control, max one per player, and the hero action is the main thing about it, which lets us exhaust it, just cut a random card from your hand and deal 2 damage to an enemy. That's very good. Now, playing it is kind of the big downside. This is why I don't think it's rated very highly in general. You have to pay that one cost, you have to play it from your hand. If I have 5 cards and I choose to play it and then pay 1, I'm down to 3 cards. If I then choose to use it, I'm down to 2 cards. So I've used up 3 cards and I've only achieved 2 damage immediately. So it's very slow to pay off. It will take a few turns to really get any kind of, anything resembling, the usual efficiency you'd be looking for, but it does have a lot of other fun uses which redeem it. The other reason I think it's kind of not like that much is it's a random card you discard, but the general strategy is to make sure you have 1 card left in your hand at the end of the turn, and that is what you use on plan B. There are exceptions, and risking it, earlier on can be worth it if you want to pop a tough and then use another attack card to take out a minion or something, but generally you're using the last card in your hand, so it's not really that random. You've kind of chosen what you don't want to spend, and that'll be your plan B target. It comes from Wave 5, it comes from the Sinister Motives expansion, and let's get into it. So I don't think this card suits fast decks because it takes a few turns to get any kind of efficiency you would like. If you are trying to rush the villain, or you're playing just a very high tempo deck, or against a villain that demands you go fast to succeed, then plan B is not the right place. And by kind of a similar nature, if you're playing aggression, you have lots of sources of damage. Jarnborn, which is a kind of similar card, kind of does what plan B does, maybe slightly better in most circumstances that aggression would want. So not so good for aggression, but that does leave us with plenty of other aspects. It doesn't suit every situation, and I'm not claiming this card is kind of, going to revolutionize your entire game or anything of that sort, but I do think it is good. The other place I don't think it's super useful is with characters that have natural sort of card or resource sinks, and the prime one I would think of is Captain America because he starts with 1 on the board as his hero ability, and that is I can do this all day. As an action, discard 1 card from your hand, ready Captain America. Then hey, he can attack for 2, he'll deal 2 damage just like plan B. But if you've ever used Captain America's action there, I can do this all day to ready up and deal 2 damage. If you've liked having that available, as a way to spend a spare card, then you're going to like plan B because that is effectively what plan B does. You're kind of buying a very limited version of Captain America's hero ability. Another card I could compare it to is Sliding Shot from my favorite Star-Lord. Now, it is less expensive, but it has a less favorable kind of exchange rate. The Element Gun is kind of 1 resource, which is 1 card for 3 damage and piercing. And it does also enable Sliding Shot, which is one of Star-Lord's hero cards. So they're not kind of a one-to-one comparison or anything, but if you've ever used Element Gun to kind of hit a minion on the board, found that really convenient, Plan B kind of offers a similar thing here for any character. Now, I do think it has other benefits. It can ignore stuns and, retaliate because it's not an attack. That's very fun. If you're playing against the Venom villain, it doesn't count as an attack against him, so using it to damage him won't give you an extra boost card, which is very, very good. And that kind of brings us to where I really like this card for, and I really like it with Justice and Protection. The low damage aspects in 1 to 2 player, I think, are the perfect place for this card. They can sometimes lack for damage. Plan B kind of provides an outlet, oh, I've got too many defense cards. Well, now one of them's 2 damage. Oh, I've got lots of forwarding too much. Now one of them's 2 damage. A lot of these problems can be solved in the kind of deck building kind of stage, but if you're in the middle of a game, it's too late. But also, some decks that really want to go into control are naturally going to have a lot of control cards, and you might end up drawing too many at once, and you're going to want damage instead. That is what Plan B is exactly for. Very good to find damage when you need it. So I really like it in control kind of decks, just as protection. And I also like it on heroes that have problems playing their whole hand. And what that means is if you're Hulk with a very small hand size and you're prone to drawing very expensive cards that you can't, play your whole hand entirely, you'll be left with cards quite often, just struggling. Plan B can really smooth that out for you. But also Spider-Man Peter Parker. So what do I mean by that? Well, I've got these cards here. There are 4 cards. He has 2 copies of each. There's 8 cards in his deck. And let's say I'm in the villain phase, and my encounter card is a side scheme. Now 3 of my 5 hand size, well, maybe 6 if I've been attacked. Spider-Man draws a lot of cards, but now, half my hand is potentially unusable, and that is very annoying. Just feed 1 into Plan B, now you've got some use out of it. Now, of course, you can often spend unusable cards on other cards that you can use, but if you happen to get a bunch of cards you can't use, then it becomes a little bit problematic. So Plan B is very good for that. Webbed Up for Spider-Man, if you're not aware, is a little bit of a trap because Spider-Man draws a card when attacked, as I mentioned. So if you play Webbed Up for Forecast, you stop the villain attacking you twice. In solo play, that means you're attacked twice less, which means you're not drawing cards from both of those attacks. So Webbed Up's actual true cost is actually closer to 6 across a couple of turns, which is a little bit problematic. So Plan B can really help smooth those kind of things out for him. The other problem Spider-Man has is he has 2 attack, but he really likes to use his defense stat. He has Swinging Web Kick, which is massive 8 damage, and then Black Cat, which is just 1 little damage. If you have a minion with, 3, 4, 5 health, it can be very annoying to find it because either you're doing massive amounts too much damage, or it can be hard to find those small amounts, that you need. So Plan B, introducing 2 damage kind of on demand, helps him hit those mid-range enemies, which is very, very nice. It just smooths things out again for him. So Spider-Man, especially in Justice and Protection, I fully recommend Plan B for. Cyclops is in a similar position. As an action, he can actually, in Alter Ego, search for a tactic upgrade, which Plan B is. One of the very few in Basic, one of the very few in the game, I think, honestly. I think most tactics are events and things. There are exceptions, a rapid response, I'm looking at you. But generally, Plan B is a nice little option for him. And he can get too many tactic upgrades of his own from his deck in his hand at once. There's only so many you can really use in one turn effectively. It will depend on the situation. But again, if you're ever playing him in Justice or Protection, I hugely recommend Plan B. Even if you're not that into it, maybe give Plan B a try just playing it on turn 1 and see how that goes for you. I really think you'll get some use out of it. Now, one of the last points I want to talk about with Plan B is kind of something I've alluded to, but in more detail, and it goes even further. Yes, it can smooth out turns, but it can also give you options. It can give you flexibility. And from a gameplay perspective, that is just fun. That is very satisfying. It lets you be a lot more tactical. Most of the time, it is most efficient to spend your whole hand. If the game gives you 5 cards at the end of your turn, you're going to want to spend those cards in your next turn. If I have 1 card left over, I've only then spent, 80% of my resources. I've left 20% in my hand unused, so spending them all is good. And Plan B, helping you spend them all, is of course good. But what that means is I'm kind of almost forced, or really heavily encouraged at least, to spend my entire hand if I can spend my entire hand. And that can kind of give you less flexibility in what you play. I can look at my 5 cards, but there might only be 2 or 3 kind of combinations, which would let me do that efficiently. With Plan B, I can use up an excess card efficiently still for 2 damage, which means I can have many more combinations where I'm not wasting anything. That flexibility to really play more of what you'd like to play in every moment can actually lead to some very notable gains, subtle but notable, and I think that's really good. And that's probably my favorite thing about Plan B. When I use it, I have a lot more turn-to-turn choice. The last point I want to make is quite niche, but very satisfying, very rewarding if you can pull it off, and that is that Plan B upsets Mystique. In the Mystique modular set and also the Rogue Nemesis set, there are cards which get shuffled into your deck, and when you draw them, they get stuck in your hand. They do not have a resource icon in the bottom corner, so they're in your hand, but you cannot spend them. It's very annoying, but Plan B turns the tables on them. Plan B doesn't care if there's a resource icon. It only cares if it's a card, not if it's a resource. And yes, encounter cards are still cards, even if they're in your hand. So Plan B, if you've got, Misled or Infiltration left in your hand at the end of your turn, couldn't do anything with it. Plan B will eat it and turn it into 2 damage, which really feels like you've kind of got the, upper hand over Mystique. Her sort of shenanigans against you, you've actually been able to sort of turn them back against her. So I really enjoy that. That brings us mostly to the end of the video. I really like Plan B. It has my approval. I think, although yes, there are decks it doesn't want to go in, there are plenty of decks that it does. If you don't like slower decks, it might not be for you, but I really think it's worth exploring. If you've enjoyed this, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel, and hopefully it will help you guys find videos that you like. I've been wanting to make videos like this since I made the channel. Just, 10 minutes or so, 1 card, let's go into it. And yeah, there's a lot of fun cards and things out there to talk about. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this, and if you want more, let me know. I have plenty more ideas for underrated cards. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.